What if the Mississippi River is the biblical Euphrates? I've been getting a lot of questions on Euphrates lately, so I thought it'd be a good time to do an updated video as I have some new insight on the topic. So, if you've been following me, you know that myself and some close friends have been mapping out the biblical locations straight from Scripture and are discovering that, in fact, the Bible did take place on the North American continent. So, real quick, before we get into Euphrates, I just want to help you orientate on the map, especially if you're new here. So, Salt Lake City is Jerusalem. The Great Salt Sea is the Dead Sea. The Jordan River runs in between the Dead Sea and Utah Lake, which is the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so I have lots of videos on this, and you can access this Google Earth map with all these locations. As you can see, there's a lot, but you can access this through my bio or channel description, depending on where you're watching it. Okay, so I'm not going to pull all the scriptures on Euphrates because there are a lot of them and they're rather complicated, but I usually do pull all the reference scriptures, but we're not going to do that today. I do want to share, though, that in the Bible, excuse me, Euphrates is often just referenced as the river, capital T, capital R, the river. Just as the Mississippi is kind of the river of the North American continent today, or the Mississippi is. And also Euphrates is a masculine name. And as you know, the Mississippi is called Old Man River. So the Mississippi is also masculine in nature. So, well, I've known the Mississippi is the Euphrates for a while. There were a lot of pieces of the puzzle that did not make sense to me yet. And I recently got some more insight on it. So I did figure out a while ago that probably the headwaters of the Euphrates were not where they are today, which is up here in Minnesota, but that rather it used to run out of the Glacial Lake Agassiz in Canada. So Lake Manitoba and Lake Winnipeg are the remains of this glacial lake. And, this glacial lake existed millions and billions of years ago, whatever. I no longer believe those time frames at all. I think this all was much more recently than we are taught. But Glacial River Warren used to run out of this glacial lake. There's a huge river bed that the Red River and the Minnesota River now run in. But this was a huge glacial river. Very, very big. Bigger than the Mississippi is today. That used to run where this purple line is to the Twin Cities and then kind of joined up with the current path of the Mississippi. So I had already figured that out. I was like, okay, I think that was like the actual path of the Euphrates back then. But there are, the Bible doesn't say that the Euphrates was in Babylon, but there are historical references and historians that do. And so I was really questioning that because there were some pieces of that didn't quite make sense. Josephus talks about it as well as some others. And there are references to the water from the Euphrates being used to water the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are over here. And as well as this is kind of where Nineveh was. This whole area was Babylon. Up here is where the Tower of Babel was. Noah's Ark landed up here. And the Valley of Shinar is up here. So we already knew this area. And this and kind of Babylonian and Assyria overlap. And so, there's all this information about Euphrates being in this region. And I was like, well, the Mississippi is way far away. That does not make sense. But then we realized, and by we, I mean myself and Seer of the Times, please go follow her if you're not already. She realized that there's a river that runs through Canada called Old Man River. So that was like ding, ding, ding. Okay, this is starting to come together. So Old Man River is part of the Saskatchewan River system, and the headwaters of it are right up here in Babylonia, right near the Tower of Babel. And this is the current path of it. I imagine it's changed some over the years. Could have easily come down a little bit closer to these hanging gardens of Babylon. Then they could use redirected the water to water the gardens. So this is all starting to come together for me. And this river runs into the Saskatchewan and then runs into the Glacial Lake. I think it actually empties into Lake Winnipeg today, if I remember right. But it would have emptied into this glacial lake, and then that's my son yelling at the puppy. And then emptied out of the glacial lake and flowed down into the Gulf of Mexico. So the Tigris is the Missouri. It meets up here in St. Louis, where all the wild things were, like the civilization there was intense. The amount of pyramids and mounds and buried cities. There was an underground highway that ran under the Euphrates. I've done a video on that as well. But anyway, that is my current best understanding of the path of the Euphrates. There was a lot of travel up and down Euphrates. It's referenced a lot in scripture. There was a lot of travel back and forth from Egypt to Assyria, all sorts of stuff. So anyway, that is my current understanding. I'm sure it will adjust and fine tune and change and morph a bit as I learn more and more. But that really put a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together for me and made a lot of things make a lot more sense. Because even the scripture saying that they will return from the north and cross the Euphrates didn't make sense to me. I'm like, well, because the Euphrates runs, north and south. So why that doesn't make sense that they could come from the east and cross. It does say the kings from the east will cross the Euphrates. So I guess the kings from the east would come over here and cross the Euphrates this way. But the lost tribes would return from the north and cross the Euphrates up here, I guess. I mean, it put a lot of puzzle pieces together for me that were missing before. So please let me know what questions or comments you have, and I'm happy to clarify anything that is not clear. But I wanted to share that because I think it really answered a lot of questions for me as far as the big picture goes. All right, I hope you all have a lovely day.